Hey, what's up? This is Wilsifer with Abysmal Hymns, and I have Reza Mills back with me again as promised, and we are going over the top five Slayer songs, which was pretty easy in some respects, but in others, you're talking about a lot of good songs to go from. Unlike a lot of the bands that we've covered, their career didn't really end up in a different place than it started as much as
Okay.
it just became a refinement. And I mean, they did change just enough with the times to stay relevant, where, even when you take into consideration the bands that are considered the big four of thrash,
Mm.
I think that they probably did it better than Metallica or Megadeth or Anthrax as far as having a sound that matched up against how metal changed over from 1983 to, where it is today.
Mm. Yeah.
So, yeah. So what are your thoughts on Slayer?
Yeah. Well, obviously, it's one of my choices. I love him, and even someone like me who isn't really a dyed in the wool sort of metalhead has a huge love for this band. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Out of those bands, the big four, so-called big four, they're definitely the one who remained the most, what's the polite way of putting it? I suppose dedicated to their core sound with sort of minor updates here and there, but they didn't make as dramatic a left field turn as say Metallica, who I'm really sorry to say has sort of done a really crappy job in the past 30 years. But Anthrax to a degree and Megadeth, but they were always my favourite. And one of my picks, I mean, the albums I choose, the tracks from are fairly pretty standard, with the exception of one. And there was certainly a huge influence on me growing up and realizing, oh, actually, you know what? Metal doesn't have to be sort of like, Motley Crue or something, or songs about, getting laid and all of that. It can be like quite vicious, but also have a punkiness to it, which is what I always admired about these guys. Yes, I suppose a criticism could be leveled that they're not the most diverse sounding bands, but that's okay. Those bands can do well. It's like AC/DC. You don't listen to it for the staggering musical variety. You listen to it because it's fun,
Right, right.
satisfying, and I think they just definitely fit in there. And yeah, I saw them live as well, only once, but everyone was going ape shit, as you can imagine. Slayer fans are pretty intense, and as intense as any hardcore show. So yeah, I love them. I just think they're a really important band. And even despite their, I suppose, limited musical diversity, you know, it hits a spot when it needs to. So yeah, I'm right on board with it.
Right, yeah, and they certainly influenced a lot of modern hardcore bands, and I mean, basically any hardcore bands that came after the 80s, I would say, were influenced by Slayer to some extent.
And dare I say, I'm a huge fan of Dave Lombardo as well because of his other musical projects too. So um,
Right, yeah, and he kind of shows that there's a lot more to what he does than, even what you would think of as like a punk drummer or hardcore drummer. So
oh, absolutely, man, cool.
for sure. All right, how about start us off?
All right, so I'm going to go way back to 1983 and their debut show, No Mercy. If I'm honest with you, possibly the weakest out of all of the big four, certainly in terms of production and the absolutely terrible album cover, which looks like it's just been scrawled together in about 5 minutes. But, um, you know, they still play some of these songs live, and it was released on Metal Blade, which, of course, uh, huge now, from what I understand. And yeah, the song I've gone for is The Antichrist, and I think it's probably the standout track as far as I'm concerned on the album. Just that chorus is so infectious. It kind of solidified. 'Cause some of the songs on here are okay, if somewhat forgettable. But this one definitely was the hookiest one. I remember listening to what was it called? Decade of Aggression, if that's what it was called, the live record. And this song would always come on, and it was just so anthemic in a weird sort of way. So definitely sort of foreshadowed what would come later. Um, but oddly hooky. I don't know. Seems like a strange thing to say, Slayer and hooks, but I always felt it was quite a cool, catchy little number, at least for Slayer. So that's
Yeah,
my first choice.
yeah, for sure. I mean, I think Slayer definitely has hooks. And that song, that was certainly one of the first few songs I heard from that album. I mean, I picked a song from that album as well.
Cool.
Um, and my pick though is Cryonics,
Hmm.
which is he sings a little more in his lower register on
Yeah.
this one, and it always kind of made me think of what they would transition to, you know.
Yeah.
Even though like a song like Antichrist or Died with the Sword, I think those songs also held up really well over the test of time. And I think that whole album does. I think it's the production really.
Yeah.
Like if
Yeah.
they should have re-recorded it around South of Heaven, which was before the trend to start re-recording your older stuff came about, which was mainly because people wanted to get like it had nothing about sounding better. It was more about getting the songwriting credits back, getting the publishing rights. Um, so yeah, I mean, because like after South of Heaven, I don't really remember him being able to sing those songs live.
Mm,
Um,
mm.
because as he focused more on lower singing, he was doing less of the kind of merciful Fate type shrieking, which I think works for that time period.
Oh, sure.
I mean, even, he did definitely the notes in Angel of Death. There was, so it depends on the night you catch him, really. Um,
What's interesting about this record is it was engineered by a guy called Bill Matoya, who would go on to sort of, well, he was a metal producer for the main part, but he also did, I think he did Animosity with COC, and he also did, what was it, one of the ones with DRI, I can't remember, it might have been Four of a Kind. And it's kind of surprising knowing that, he's a pretty skilled producer or an engineer, and it sounds so. I don't know, muddy maybe, maybe not kind of the crispest
say
sound.
raw,
Yeah,
like it kind of always joke that when it comes to like sludge metal, sludge is like
yeah.
what happens when punks try to play Doom. I think Slayer is what happens when punks try to play Judas Priest. So there was kind of that raw 80s metal element kind of taken, even that predated the 80s. If you think about like early Judas Priest and the first couple Iron Maiden records,
Hmm.
which Kerry King swears that Tom Araya had never heard. Um, if you took them and put them through more of a punk filter, I could see uh,
Yeah, I sort of
how it
see
would
that.
come out sounding like that.
Jeff, God rest his soul, was the punk in the band,
Right.
so God rest his soul. Cool man. Yeah, nice one. All right. I suppose I'll move on to my next one. And that is it's my favorite Slayer album, bar none. Even the one after this doesn't meet up to the expectations for me, even though I like it. But I'm talking about 1985's Hell Awaits, and I'm talking about the song, the disgusting lyrics of Necrophiliac. I There's something about this tune. I remember actually the first time I saw the album cover, I think I was, I don't know, 16, 17 when I first saw the album cover and heard the album and actually being scared. I mean, it sounds so stupid, really, because you look at it and you think, well, it's not that scary, but I'd never seen anything like that before. I was used to like Sabbath and things like that. And then seeing this album cover and the lyrics are just, well, necrophiliac, I think we don't need to go into grotesque detail, but some of the lyrics are really quite, I mean, you can sort of see where black metal and the death metal stuff that would come later got their influences from. It's and there's a very twisted riff. I don't know. I'm not a musician, so I'm not good at about talking about, instrumentation. But you know what I mean? That weird guitar effect that he has. It sounds like The Living Dead. It's a disgusting song, but probably my favorite on the album. And that's saying something with all the banging tunes on here, like the title track. But yeah, I love Necrophiliac. I think it's just such a sick song, but so weirdly gratifying at the same time. So that's my next choice.
Yeah, I mean, I love that song. He feels the urge, the burning need. But
Yeah.
I think that it just goes to show that, like everything in that song just kind of fits in the right places while still being very like dissonant and um dark. Like this is definitely move them, and I think maybe not each album, but they progressively got darker up until Season in the Abyss, I think. Um, and then everything opened up and they got back to like just punky thrashing. But um, yeah, I mean that's a great song. That album's kind of what bridges over into death metal.
Oh yeah.
I kind of feel.
Yeah, you almost like it. You can because I think Seven Churches came out the same year, and then you had like Sepultura with their first album, and then you had you know what I mean. Death were going to come a couple of years later, so you can sort of see that sort of that curve, sort of that progression, I
Right.
guess. So yeah, I love it. So
For sure. Yeah, I mean, you can't go wrong with it. And, so I would have picked something from that album, but there's so much to cover.
sure.
And I knew that you would probably touch on that one for sure. So I'm gonna fast forward to the next most obvious album, although it might not be the most obvious song unless you know me. Um, and that's going to be 1986's Rain and Blood. And I'm going to go with Ultra Sacrifice.
Nice. Yep.
Um, which, one of my complaints sometimes with Slayer can be, although it's not maybe their later stuff. When they just pour on the speed, it's kind of like death metal bands with blast beats.
Mm,
Um, they're more successful.
mhm.
And it's not that I dislike the moments, but sometimes they can play so fast till it feels like the songwriting feels rushed. And I think that Ultra Sacrifice is like the balance of that. Like they play as fast as they need to and prove their point, um, while still being very concise in their songwriting. And there's like punches, the lyrics are like articulated so you can understand what he's saying. Um, and this was like my favorite song on the album growing up, even though, you got some other big notable songs on this album. Yeah.
Isn't there that ridiculous sort of breakdown? I mean, I love the tune. It's a good tune. Is that funny sort of breakdown? One to the realms of Satan,
No, he
Satan.
says, learn the singer words. I'll
Yeah,
praise
that's
him.
it. Where it slows down. I've always kind of made me chuckle a little bit. Some people, you know what? I actually find Slayer quite funny at times because it was almost
Yeah, I mean, I was really devastated when I was a teenager when I remember there was a Rolling Stone article that they did where this he's a televangelist at the time, but he now he has some other shtick that he does where he's doing the podcast circuit. But there's this religious personality named Bob Larson who's
Mhm.
big in America, and I might even have the Rolling Stone article somewhere. He did an interview with Slayer, and Tom Murray was like, "Oh, we don't worship the devil. We're just selling albums." But it wasn't. He didn't go as far to say, "I'm a Catholic."
No.
Like he has since then. He just talked about how that was like playing a role in a. movie or whatever. I was like,
Sure.
you know, very frustrated by that as a kid because if you didn't worship the devil, I didn't want to listen to you.
Yeah, it wouldn't have done him any good at the time to have gone full striper, would it? Yeah.
Right. No, I mean, so again, you have to think that, and this happened, I think, on the Seasons in the Abyss tour, maybe the first leg of that.
Hmm.
So we're talking 89, 90.
Hmm.
90 seems like that's a fair place for it to be.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so then you had bands that were a little or seemed a little more serious at the time. For me, like Morbid Angel and Deicide, things started to get more extreme in that direction too, which
Sure.
was right, as black metal was coming out, like we've talked about before. So
Yeah, of course. And don't forget, I mean, Tom Araya must be like one of the nicest people. He's just like this jolly Santa Claus guy, and it's just so contrary to like this evil sounding band, but that's what I love about them as well. None of them are really like, scary. It's just
yeah,
they
he was I met them at a signing they were doing for Divine Intervention. So it was
yeah.
everybody but Dave Lombardo.
Mm, of
And
course.
they're what you would expect from them.
Yeah, nice guys. Cool, man. Yeah, nice one. Good choice. So I've gone for the same album. I had to include something from it. And I've gone for Piece by Piece. And the reason for that is, I think, obviously the album starts with Angel of Death. Everyone knows that song. And what I love about Piece by Piece is I just love the way it starts. It's sort of mid-paced and then speeds up and it gets mid-paced again. It's just such a, I don't know. I always found it like, again, one of the hookier numbers on the record. I mean, we're talking about an album that's only what, barely 30 minutes
Yeah,
long, if
28
that.
minutes.
Yeah, right. It's like a punk type length. And so yeah, piece by piece, I just think it's a really short, sharp shock. I mean, it's not necrophobic, of course, but yeah, I just love the alternation from Angel of Death, something so extreme and just like chaotic and up over the top, and then it slows right down to piece by piece, which has its quicker moments, but for the most part, just shows that maybe there's a slightly different side to the band. They're not just like hell for leather like 100% of the time. They're very capable of, bringing the tempo down. So yeah, definitely one of my favorites.
Right, yeah. I think that, and it's totally a case where, with these guys, when you think about everything in retrospect and like the influence that they have, all the songs on Rain and Blood are have a lot going on. I mean, they might be all like 2 to 3 minutes, but there's a lot going on, which I think a lot of grindcore bands eventually learned from, particularly the newer ones, that you can still write a quick punky song and cram a ton of riffs in there.
Yeah, sure.
And they still have dynamics. I think that, and that factors into the kind of hook point that you were talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess with Slayer, they're like one of those bands where on the surface it's just like, oh, for God's sake, how am I going to catch up with this? But you have to listen a little bit carefully. You have to fine tune your ears somewhat to catch some of the nuances there, because there are nuances, believe it or not, listeners, viewers, with Slayer. So you just have to be, just get past the surface level. Quick, quick, quick. Here we go, Satan, serial killers, bloody blah. There's a lot more going on than you would imagine, and that's why I loved about them. It wasn't like as drastic a turn as someone like Metallica, who then went on to do blues rock or whatever with new.
Right.
But if you listen carefully, there's a lot more structure. There's a lot more different things going on. So yeah, that's what I love about them.
Well, speaking of nuance, I am going to take us a step further into even more nuanced. And I think that this album is important because if I think if they did not make this album, we might not be talking about them today, or in a different context. We would, who knows? They might
Yeah,
be more like on par with Exodus or somebody like that.
Mhm.
Um, but I'm going to take us to 1988 for
Yeah,
South of Heaven, and I am picking the title track.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Just because, I mean, shows that they don't have to play fast.
No.
And I think they're more powerful for not doing that on this song. And it's a gradual build of dynamics until we're at that point of where it's chaos living in an age of distrust and everything's built up and you got the double bass hitting you, but in a more deliberate manner than like Angel of Death. Um, so yeah,
I think it's a fabulous album and really one that you know, in a way, it's kind of more powerful than Rain in Blood, which, although brilliant, I don't know, it just feels more threatening, and it's just so well written and so much tighter in a weird sort of way. Again, it showed. I think it was an essential album for them to make. You're right. You kind of hinted at that at the start before introducing the song that what would have been the point in them doing Rain in Blood Part 2? I mean, how boring, it was just so great, just the same thing again. So they just went completely the other way, kept the intensity, but just slowed it down, almost a
right.
little bit doomy in some ways. So yeah, brilliant choice. I love that record too. So, um, and that
Cool.
and that kind of brings in on my choice. And as you probably heard me, praising the record, I've also gone for a cut off the album, but I've actually gone for the final track on on the record, which is called "Spill the Blood." Um, nice family friendly title, of course, being Slayer. This is a Hanneman track, and it's a lot slower actually. It's again, I was touching on Doom. I don't want people thinking, well, this is sleep or Survivors. No, I'm not talking about that, but it definitely it kind of it's, it's a lot slower with its tempo, almost a bit Sabbathy ish. And just a really great way to end a fantastic album. And also, it follows Dissident Aggressor, the Judas Priest cover. So it kind of wraps up the record and then in a way, of course, was their final record of the 80s as well. So it kind of it's a good way to end that four album run and the 80s output anyway.
Right. And then you also kind of got the feeling with that song that that was like Tom Araya's best vocal to date, I would say. Like he
Yeah.
does the most singing
Oh yeah.
on that one.
Absolutely. Yeah, I really recommend if people don't listen to South in Heaven, the album, or think, oh well, it's no rain in blood, you want to go back and revisit it. Um, Definitely. Easily as good as the first three records. So
Right.
cool.
And I think that also holding up with that trend of great records comes my next pick, which is from 1990's Seasons in the Abyss.
Hmm.
And it might be I mean, if it wasn't for South of Heaven, if I had to rank these, it would be my number two pick is Dead Skin Mask off Seasons in the
Yeah.
Abyss. I love their serial killer love songs, and this is the best one. I mean, there's some others on the albums that followed, and I guess Spill the Blood kind of started the trend a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, but this is feels creepier, and there was you know, even though I don't like it as much as South of Heaven, and some of that might be because when Seasons in the Abyss came out, then they got opened up to the broader metal audience that wasn't just thrash. Because they started playing them on Headbangers Ball and that type of thing.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's yeah, writing a song about Ed Gein. Can't go wrong.
Well, yeah, absolutely. There's a band that I really love. I mean, you're on it, so you'll probably know them. But there's a band called Tad. And the main guy, Tad Doyle, used to wear an Ed Gein t-shirt. So yeah, I mean, Slayer wasn't obviously the first ones to sort of touch on this, but
No.
yeah, one thing I have to point out about Season the Abyss, I'm an artwork guy, as people who are listening and your good self will probably know I touch upon artwork because I feel it's a really integral part. I'm really sorry to say I don't know, after two very cool album covers, yeah, maybe three cool album covers from Hella Waits on. What on earth were they doing on this? I mean, I think it's absolutely dreadful. I don't know what the concept was here, but it's bloody awful. I mean, it just and it kind of for a while it kind of put me off the record. You know what I mean? It's just like I think it's very, very poor. I don't know. It's not scary, it's not dark, it's just like a green face with a bunch of crucifixes and spitting skulls or something, which sounds cool on the surface until you see it. So that aside, yeah, it's a pretty cool record. That's just me and my art critic type of thing coming out. But
It's all
yeah,
right.
yeah, cool. Excellent, man. Well, God, is it the fifth choice already? Jesus. Um, well, I've gone for a massive wild card here, and people will be going, "What are you talking about?" And I have actually gone way further to 1996, and not a record that's great. I've gone for Undisputed Attitude, but I've only gone for this because it had a big impact on me in terms of getting me into hardcore. Because um, I'm guessing this was probably a Jeff Hanneman inspired project because he was the punk of the band. Not the others. Not that the others didn't like punk, of course, but I think he was the guy who was bringing this stuff in. And before this, I mean, I was reading when I first got the album, I had no idea who these people were. I didn't know who Minor Threat was. I didn't know Verbal Abuse. I didn't know TSOL. I was like, who the hell are these bands? So it really inspired me to like check them out. And it's like from there, that my love of hardcore really started. And the song I've gone for is Disintegration Free Money. Just because the way, I mean, it kicks the album off, it's a Verbal Abuse cover. I just love the way it goes, Disintegration, you fucking bastards. I just love that intro. It's absolutely brilliant. I used to crank that up full volume. And Tom would have made a great punk singer. He guests on what's that West Memphis 3 thing that Rollins.
Oh, right, right, yeah.
I think he does Revenge. And again, he does an amazing cover of that song, easily as good as Chavo. So I just love it for that reason. Again, I don't want people to think, yeah, this is a classic must-own album. Don't go and spend 20, 30, 40 pound or dollars on it. It's not an essential release, but if you happen to find it in a bargain bin, it's definitely worth picking up. Especially because I think Slayer are really good um, at punk covers, and I think this is proof of it. They did piss off Ian MacKaye because they covered "Guilty of Being White" and they sort of, you know, changed one of the lyrics, "Guilty of Being Right." But they were kind of doing it tongue in cheek. Obviously, Ian's quite a serious, austere guy, so he wasn't too impressed. But hey, that's punk rock, right? Pissing
Right.
people off. So yeah, Disintegration Free Money, that's my kind of wild card choice. Um, Again, not a brilliant album by any means, but an important one just on a personal level. So that's my choice.
Cool. I mean, yeah, I don't disagree with that album at all. It is pretty awesome. And they do, an excellent job with those songs like you think that they would. Richard Hung Himself is probably my
Oh,
favorite from that one.
that's a good one.
But I am gonna close it out. I'm gonna go even further.
Okay.
I'm gonna go all the way to 2001. And with that, it's not the title track, but it comes close because they sing the title in it, which is God Hates Us All, and the song is called Disciple.
Hmm.
And a funny thing about this album is not only did it come out on in 2001, but it came out on 9/11.
Oh, okay.
And and I remember distinctly, even though 9/11 was unfolding that morning, go into the record store and having to buy this album so I could, have my end of the world party because I thought the world was going to end that day.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just listening to it on, I mean, it kind of fit the tone of that era perfectly, which, I think that that's a testimony to their endearing quality, because we're talking, this album still, even now, though, I guess it's older because it came out, 2021, that's 25 years ago, but,
Mhm.
um, you know, it hits more like a hardcore album
Mhm.
and is, a good reflection of what was going on in the world. So,
Oh yeah, I mean it was his last Paul Bostof's last album till he returned on that not very good record, Repentless. But yeah, I really like this record. I mean, it's got much more of kind of a groove metal feel to it, so you can sort of easily imagine sort of them sort of maybe taking notes from Machine Head and bands like that. I'm not saying they sound anything like that, but there is kind of more of that sort of pummeling sound, certainly. And yeah, I remember Henry Rollins actually talking about Slayer because he's a fan, and he was talking about how this record was his like workout album, especially the title track. So I can sort of see that because it has a weighty sound to it, I suppose.
right, yeah.
But, and I'm looking at Wikipedia actually. It's got one of the tags, genre tags, as new metal, and obviously it followed a very controversial album, Diabolus in Musica, which was hit and miss really for the main part. But it kind of, if it was new metal, it did it far, far better on this record. Kind of incorporating it with their traditional thrash sound and, as I said before, adding a bit more groove. So yeah, underrated little record, I feel.
Right. Yeah, I don't really hear it as being new metal, but you know,
Yeah.
um, it
Yeah,
is
no rapping, thank God.
right. Yeah, no, right.
Tom did.
Nor did they really ever do that, except maybe the
No,
Judgment Night soundtrack.
yeah, I mean,
Um,
there was a couple of moments on Diabolus in music. I don't want to say it was rap, but it had that kind of rhythmic thing going on. But it wasn't, we're not talking about, yo, 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 Fred Durst type of thing going on here. It's just kind of touches here and there. But I suppose just in more of the groove thing, I guess. But yeah, it's a good one.
cool. All right. Well, that takes care of us. We knocked out our top five Slayer songs. I think if you're into Slayer, you probably have checked out some of these, or if
Mm.
not a good portion, but there was a second listen. And if you're trying to figure out how to get into Slayer, well, I don't know. I would think you're probably going to recommend Hell Awaits.
Oh, yeah.
I'm probably going to say South of Heaven, and most people are probably going to say Rain and Blood.
Red Blood. Well, I love the fact that we've chosen the two albums, which, although people enjoy them, is not necessarily their first pick.
No.
It's obviously everyone's going to go, most people will go Rain in Blood, which, of course, is a fantastic record, absolutely, absolute banger. But I don't know. I enjoy it, but still, it's all about Helen Waits for me.
Yeah, and I think, what makes this more impressive for what they did was when you reframe it with the time frame that these albums came out with, like with Rain and Blood, there was nothing else like that at the time.
Sure.
Because Metallica and Megadeth and even Bonded by Blood were not hitting it that hard
No,
in that way. And a lot of it was Rick Rubin's production. He placed the guitars in the sweet spot where, everybody would be trying to replicate that sound for years to come. So,
sure.
yeah,
Absolutely.
something can be said for, being at the top of the game. So, and they, probably took extreme metal to bigger audiences and opened the doors for people like Slipknot and, that sort of thing. So,
Yeah, for sure.
yep.
Cool.
Awesome. Well, we'll confer and come back with a top five of some we've kicked around some names, so we'll reconvene next week with something else that will be, I'll go and say we'll probably do go ahead and do Die Soon. Um,
I, yeah.
that seems like a pretty fair pick. It takes very little homework for me. So
Oh, me too.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I listened to that the Crosses album,
Yeah.
which that one, we'll have to talk about that a little bit. That one's
Yeah.
interesting.
Absolutely. And I also recommend people check out the biography of what's it called again? It was uh, the recent one. I mean, I just read the
Right,
bloody
yeah.
thing.
There's
That one.
actually an episode that I did where I interviewed the author of that book.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you guys can find that when you're busy liking and subscribing and doing all that good stuff, go down and
It's
click that. I'll repost another link to it when we
yeah.
cover that ground next week.
It's a
But
fantastic book. It really, it just cuts to the quick. It discusses the records. It touches some of the band's backgrounds. It's something that I'm usually not that interested in, where they went to school or something. That stuff doesn't necessarily engage me. But this book isn't like that. It just rattles along, gets to the point, and for fans like you and me, it's just an essential read. They're fantastic band. And people, please pick up that book.
for sure, it's worth a read. And
Cool.
we will see you guys next week.